Poland's president says that there's no proof the missile which killed two people in the east of the country was fired by Russia. He says there are many indications it was a Ukrainian air defense missile. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg says it followed a massive wave of strikes by Russia. He's blaming Moscow for the incident, as is Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, regardless of who actually fired it. Samantha de Bendern is a Russia expert and associate fellow at Chatham House and joins me now. Samantha, some of the reporting last night seemed to suggest we were on the brink of World War III. And I think, the fact that this missile landed in a NATO country didn't escape anyone's notice. And there was definitely a sense of foreboding. What was your assessment of what had happened?
Well, I would really like to de-dramatize everything because, yes, a missile did land in NATO territory. But there's this whole misconception that if a NATO country is under attack, all 30 allies will immediately get into sort of war footing and respond. And that's not at all the case. Even if this had been a direct attack against Poland, before anything was to happen, the North Atlantic Council, which is the ambassadors of every single NATO member state, would meet and discuss the way forward at the invitation of the country under attack. What happened yesterday is the Poles actually reacted with a lot of calm and very, very sort of level-headed. They had an internal meeting. They then said to NATO, we might invoke what's called Article 4 of the North Atlantic Treaty. That is the article under which a member state can say it feels threatened and it can ask for consultations. That's all discussions. So from my point of view, I definitely didn't feel that this was, we were all about to go into World War III. It looked from the very beginning as though it was a mistake. It was very difficult to imagine, however irrational Russia can seem these days, it was very difficult to imagine Russia deliberately targeting NATO territory, and certainly not a farm in the middle of Poland. It would have probably chose a slightly more
Bigger
valuable
target.
target.
And what has been Russia's reaction to it?
Well, Russia's immediate reaction was, oh, this is a provocation. This is the Ukrainians trying to get attention to look elsewhere. And it immediately denied having anything to do with it. It even began to deny having launched that many missile attacks on Ukraine. It said, oh, we've only launched about half a dozen missile attacks on Ukraine, whereas it looks as though over 100 missile attacks were launched on Ukraine yesterday. So it was a typical immediate Russian reaction. A more measured reaction would be, well, let's see what the investigation shows. This morning, Dmitry Peskov, the Kremlin spokesman, actually praised the US response, saying, we welcome the fact that the US has had a very measured, very level-headed, very cool response to this incident.
Mm.
What has been, yeah.
Well, no, I was just going to say, yesterday we heard about the CIA meeting his counterpart, Russian counterpart, the head of the CIA meeting his Russian counterpart. Today we've got the Russians praising America's reaction to this, this missile, mistaken missile, as it were. Is there something, slightly more going on than is currently being zoomed in on between America and Russia?
I don't know. I'm not privy to any sort of secret confidential information, but I think there is. I think, for one thing, the Russians are hoping that the Americans will put pressure on Ukraine to negotiate and to make some territorial concessions. I think the Americans, on their part, are worried about continued unending warfare in Ukraine, how the Americans are going to continue to support Ukraine, because even America is now beginning to start dipping into stockpiles of weapons that, if they give much more to Ukraine, they're going to start feeling a potential lack of weapons to defend their own territory. So I definitely think, in spite of all the declarations that allies are saying that no one is putting pressure on Ukraine, I think that behind the scenes, there are a lot of discussions going on to find a way to stop this. The American National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, was in Kiev about 10 days ago to talk to President Zelensky. Again, official version is no pressure was made on Ukraine. I would think that behind the scenes, there have been some pretty strong discussions going on.
I was going to ask you, how difficult will it be to ratchet down tensions at this point? But what you're suggesting is that all the players concerned are very eager to ratchet down tensions around this incident.
Yes, I think they are. One thing that I've found slightly disappointing so far has actually been the Ukrainian reaction. That there's been no comment from Zelensky. There has been, I think it was a deputy defense minister, I'm don't have the exact title on top of my head here,
Don't worry.
saying that, that they still believe that this was not a Ukrainian missile, sort of denying it categorically. I would have hoped that there would have been a slightly more Western style response, I would say, saying, well, we need to investigate, we need to understand what happened, which is what the Poles did. The Poles, as I said, have been extremely measured in their response. I would have hoped the same thing from the Ukrainians, and hopefully that we will see some kind of more measured response in the next few hours.